too. Feel free to thumbs up, use the chat, or a pretty small group of 15, so unmute yourself, that's fine too. Yeah, so thank you everybody for joining us today. And maybe look at those of you that haven't speak yet, maybe I'll get you to mute yourself just so that you have that. Perfect. So welcome everybody to a webinar from Campus on National Women's Day. We're happy to be joined by Emily from DC Soccer, so thanks Emily for taking the time to join us. We're also joined by Marissa from Ontario Tech University, their hockey program, Audra Sherman as well from Ontario Tech, and she is joining us from the Women's Soccer and Women's Soccer. And then Alex, thanks for joining us as well from DC Soccer as well. My co-moderator today is Emily Mussell, who's a sport management student at Durham College and a graduate from Ontario Tech the last year, so a year almost done that we've been graduating. Awesome. So maybe I'll ask the first question and then I'll pass it over to kind of whoever wants to answer. Actually, maybe Audra, I'll pick on you first if you don't mind, which is, what does International Women's Day mean to you?
I think for me, it just kind of highlights where we've kind of come from, where we are now, presently, and where we want to go in the future. So it's kind of brings a spotlight to all the successes that women have faced and achieved, but also the barriers that we've had to overcome. So I think it's important that we have our own day to kind of, you know, come together and you know, see how far we come and where we need to go, for sure. That's kind of
Awesome.
how I see it.
Thank you. Any other one of our panelists want to jump in on that one? What does International Women's Day mean to you?
Yeah, basically just the back on it. It's basically just like a day to celebrate, you know, all women all around the world, our achievements, you know, the strength and courage that we've, you know, have throughout all the years, and, you know, where we were and where we've come. And it's pretty awesome. And yeah, so that's kind of what I think.
Thank you. Anybody else want to jump in with what International Women's Day means to them? You don't have to be a panelist. If you're somebody else that has some sentiments, feel free to jump in as well.
I was just thinking the exact same thing as Audra and Emily, just to appreciate the contributions that women make to society every day, and just to remind everyone of the accomplishments that we've made, and then acknowledging the work that, you know, still needs to be done for women's rights.
Agreed. Yeah. As Audra and Emily and you, Marissa, have mentioned, it's nice to see how many kind of barriers have been broken, but so many still more to go. So appreciate that sentiment as well. Great. And I'll ask the next question too. Describe a few characteristics about yourself that you believe have led to your success. So it could be in sport, or it could be outside of sport, in academics, in other areas of your own personal life. I'll kind of leave that up to you to decide kind of what are some characteristics that you feel have led to your success thus far. Marissa, can I turn that over to you?
Yeah, for sure. I just think I feel like I'm hardworking and like resilient. So whenever I find myself stuck or run into a roadblock or anything, I always kind of fight through and find a way to accomplish what I originally set my mind to.
Awesome. Em or Audra, do you want to jump in on that one? Characteristics about yourself that you believe have led to your success?
Yeah, I can go first. I think, like, obviously determination, like specifically with school. I mean, it took me a while to kind of figure out what I wanted to do and how I wanted to get there. So I think just like the patience, I've been very patient because, you know, I've been in school for a while, and I believe that I'm very hardworking and I have determination, and it's got me to where I am today. So
awesome. Good characteristics and traits to have for sure. They'll serve you very well. Audra, did you want to have anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, I've overlapped a little bit with you guys. Where definitely resiliency and patience. I think it's and then this open-mindedness of seeing kind of where I was lucky because I got to see like how it was as a player and I was in time playing when the 99ers came in, women's soccer, when they that was the years where soccer started to take off. And I thought when I was younger, I was seeing that as like the pinnacle of women breaking some barriers. And now it's actually what I see now as a coach, how long we've come. So I see characteristic for me would be the patience and resiliency and just the open-mindedness that there's so much more we have to go through, right? So it's I guess that's kind of that characteristic for me, for sure.
Awesome. And Kelly, if I'm not putting you on the spot, do you mind answering for that for us too, as an alum? Excuse me. What do you think led to your success? So you've graduated, you've moved on from the university. What kind of led to your success while you were here and even beyond post graduation?
Yeah, no, it's okay. I don't mind being put on the spot. Just while I have the floor, I was just going to jump in and say that I had the honor of playing with Murphy and then coaching her. So her resilience is like unlike any other. So that is something that affected me playing with her. So I just kind of wanted to second those personal strengths that she has.
Thanks, Mick.
Of course. For me, I would say the same thing, like the resilience and what Audra just said with the patience. Growing up, we didn't have, female hockey where I was. So I played with like the boys league, I guess. I was the only girl until I was about 14. And then I switched into the new female league. So the patience and seeing kind of how our professional league has grown and it's getting some more support and is really becoming a bigger thing so that people have that opportunity has been something. So it's really great to see on that. I don't know if that
Awesome.
added anything.
No, that's perfect. And appreciate the shout out to Marissa. That's great. Thank you. It's interesting that all of you have touched on resilience, which is such a hot topic right now. So we're straying a little bit from one of the questions that I was going to ask next, but what makes you resilient versus some other people? So like when Mick, if you say Marissa is so resilient, Marissa, what do you think, how did you get that level of resilience that you have now? Do you have any idea?
Honestly, I just think like I have the most like supportive and resilient family, and I just kind of watched like they just kind of led by example. And so whenever there's hardships in my family or whatever, like my whole family just my mom's on here. Hi, Mom. They all just like pushed through and found a way to get through. So I think it's just kind of how I was brought up, and that's just kind of in my nature.
That's awesome. Good stuff. I was reading an article the other day, and they were talking about resilience being, it's more than just me personally being resilient. It's all of the people that are around you. So I firmly believe that as well. And that's why it's so nice to be part of a team, I think, as well, because then you have, like Audra and Alex as your coaches, you have teammates. There's so many support networks around you, which is awesome. Alex, before we wrap this question up about a few characteristics that you believe lead to success of student athletes, is there any traits that you would see that you see quite frequently in athletes that maybe we haven't touched on yet? Sorry, Alex, if that was for you. If you have any traits that you see in students that student athletes that maybe haven't hit on yet?
You know what? I think they've covered it. It's interesting when you have those young ladies that seem to have that grit and edge that sometimes are viewed by others as, oh, she's a little odd. Those are the ones that I found to be the best because they just wanted to be better and weren't too worried about what other people thought of them, right? It wasn't cool for girls to be athletic many years ago, right? That just wasn't the thing, right? I've got the most gray hair here, so I'm definitely the oldest person on the panel, and definitely have seen a lot of changes over my 30 plus years of coaching, but was just to see the progression of young women wanting to do what they saw on the other side on the men's game. And when that started, success started for these young women.
We can't hear you.
Sorry. I could see how that would be the case for sure. I'm going to turn it over to my co-moderator to ask the next question. So thanks everybody for your input so far. Emma, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Angie. So to build off the last question, What have been some of the biggest struggles and triumphs as a woman in sport?
I'd like to answer that, Emily. That was one I gave a lot of thought to. I thought early on in women's sport, it was the lack of quality coaching that was missing. Many, many years ago, unfortunately, it was only men coaching soccer, or men were coaching both sides, say young men and young women. And I saw a pattern where, the women's team were treated differently. Girls were, these soft, gentle things that we shouldn't push the envelope with. And what I noticed happened, way back with me was when a number of coaches from the men's side crossed over into the women's side. Quality coaches that started to raise the bar and open, and then the door became open for coaching of women to join. Because, I'll be honest, 30 years ago, there weren't any. It was all these, it was a boys club, and it was wrong. And the reason I went over to the women's side is I had 3 daughters. I didn't have any sons. So that was, that was my magnet. And when I got over to there, I found that, because I've coached both sides, I rather coach women any day of the week over guys. Emily would back me on this because she knows some of the remarks I've made about some of the men's teams. So I think that early on was a problem, and I think it's got a lot better. And now that we have women coaches in it that are better than most men coaches, I think it's really allowed the game to move forward. So that was something I saw over the years.
Alex, I echo that because I actually went through the school system in the U.S. and I picked up pretty early. Like at university, I did have a female coach, but I also it was a married couple, and her husband was there as well. And I saw he took more of a dominant role, although she was a former U.S. national team player. And she actually had more of the credentials and whatnot. And I start to really see that there was a trend during that time where there was the quality of coaching was not strong on the women's. It's almost like the men who did not make it on the men's game would then just go on the women's side and then try to get back on the men's side. Whereas I'm not seeing that right now. Like now it's changing. There is a lot better investment in quality coaching in general. And a barrier for women was because this was my career. I mean, I went to teachers college to not be a teacher. It was to be a better coach. So I, from the start, decided I want to be a coach. That's going to be my profession, and I'm going to do it in Canada. So it was well established in the US, and I chose to come back and do it in Canada. And I did it in a pro environment as well, in a male pro environment. And the biggest thing and the barrier is that coaching is typically not a full-time position. And so there's a choice that a lot of women feel they have to make. And that happens in many careers, but especially coaching because of the type of commitment it takes, but also when typically training is, which is usually 3 o'clock on, it conflicts with their home life and the reality of our duties within the home. And that's not a sexist thing. A lot of men, we should the same kind of duties in the house, but there is the first few years of a child's life, right? The woman is very important to the survival of the child. So there's that barrier, but there's that boys club, and that boys club is still around, but there's so many more men that are supportive, really supportive, and it typically starts with the men that do have 3 daughters, and we're seeing that. I'm fortunate. I've always had a lot of supportive people, male and females, within my career and my journey. But the barrier is it's got to be a position. Like it can't just be volunteers anymore. It can't be part-time. It's got to be a real profession. You got to be able to get certified, be the top, the best, and get those opportunities, and not because you golf with somebody and know somebody. So there's a lot of barriers, and there is a glass ceiling. But the glass ceiling, I don't think is only a sexist glass ceiling. I think it's actually the sport glass ceiling that there's sport in Canada. It hasn't really reached a pinnacle of what, I mean, in some maybe basketball and hockey it might be a bit different, but I believe in hockey, women's hockey, we had 2 pro leagues, and I think there's 1 now. So there's some financial struggles that we face, right?
Well, you know what, I think the best example is the U.S. women's soccer team. You know, what they're getting paid compared to the men's. That's one of the greatest dynasties of sport. And every time they stand up and want to protest, I'm cheering for them because they deserve way more. So Audra's right. It's not fair. And, you know, one of the messages that I have always coached my daughters and my players is it's not fair out there right now. So, I think, you know, all coaches, hopefully they're doing this. You know, we're trying to teach life lessons. So when I coach women, which is all I coach now, it's not all about sport. It's about getting ready for society and taking on society because it's not fair yet. It's not where it needs to be. It's getting better. I hope I see equality in my lifetime, gender equality, but it's people like these young ladies that are going to have to fight the fight and keep that battle going, and then a couple old farts like me behind saying, yep, you're doing the right thing, keep it going.
Thanks, Alex, and thanks, Audra, too. Marissa or Emily, did you want to weigh in on that question about struggles and triumphs as a woman in sport at all? Or should we move on to the next one? I'll leave it to you.
Like me, Emily, or the other Emily?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, I basically said it all. I mean, it's all really about, you know, with the struggles too, is we as women don't get recognized enough for, you know, all the stuff that we do in our sport. And like even seeing it at the school, you know, when we play back to back, for the women's usually play first and the men's play after us. And just the amount of like supporters that we see for us compared to, you know, we see for men's teams is pretty apparent. So I feel like that's the big thing is, you know, we are still working on, you know, getting the support and recognition we need. But I mean, it is definitely improving. So that is definitely a triumph from, you know, what it used to be. So that is something that, you know, is continuing and we're still fighting for, I guess, to this day. So yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you. Marissa, did you want to jump in, or has everything kind of been said already?
Yeah, it's basically the same thing. I mean, I know Mick knows, and probably anyone who's ever been to both the women's and men's game, that there's way more people that go to the men's games. Sorry, my cat's meowing. There's way more people that go to the men's games all the time. And even when I committed here, someone said to me, oh, well, it's easy to commit to play like university hockey as a girl. And I was like, it just completely discredited all the like hard work I'd done and all the things that I'd done. And it was just like, well, it's way harder for guys to do that. And I'm like, oh, maybe you should have just worked harder too. Like they just completely discredit like anything because it's like, oh, well, it's girls, it's easy to get into. When realistically, I have many people that I played with that contacted schools and didn't get accepted into programs and stuff. But in there, and some, I mean, a lot of these were like guys in my high school who played hockey and never made the AAA team or whatever. But it's just interesting to see how it's way more exciting if a man gets accepted into a university than a woman, because it's just easier for women because I don't know what they think, but it's not.
Yeah, a real skewed perception, eh? For sure. Our next question was, and this will be I'm looking forward to your answers to this one. Name a woman who has positively impacted or inspired you, and if you can share one lesson that she has taught you. I'll open it to yeah, go ahead. Thanks, Emily.
This could speak to a lot of people, but for sure my mother, she's played a very big role in my life and everything that, you know, I've done. She's pushed me to do things I don't even think I would have done. And basically, I guess a lesson that she taught me is to have patience. She says, things take time, and everything, happens for a reason. If I'm going down a path, I don't think I'm going to be, I don't think I'm supposed to be going down. She says, don't worry. You're going down this path for a reason. And, yeah, just to, keep going, work hard, and it'll all work out in the end.
It's funny, that comes up a lot, I feel, Emily. Thanks so much for sharing that, you kind of think exactly where you're want to go, and then when that kind of derails a little bit or goes off the path, you think, I'm on the wrong path now, but it's not necessarily so. So I'm so glad to hear your mom has shared that with you as well. That's awesome. Anybody else want to share a woman who has been positively impacted your life or inspired you in something that they've taught you?
Yeah, I'll share. So mine, well, obviously I mentioned before about how supportive and resilient my family is. And I specifically mentioned my sister. I actually played against her for a couple of years. And Mick played against her for, I think, probably all 4 or 5 years. She played for Brock University. She's graduated now. But one lesson that I think she taught me was just to always be myself and to always advocate for myself and to stand up for myself in sport, in every aspect of life. She always kind of, if I was feeling down about something, she would say, okay, well, go talk to someone about it and figure out how you're going to get past this. Make sure you stand up for yourself. And yeah, so I would say it was her, and she always just kind of taught me to just be myself and make sure that I advocate for myself.
Awesome, thank you. Audra, do you mind if I turn it over to you?
Yeah, I'm going to have to say the same thing. The minute I read the question, it was my mother, without a doubt. And I think that's where it all starts, right? It's if you have a strong role model in your life, that's where it comes from. So what she taught me is the ability and need to be independent, but also be dependent. And being a strong female doesn't mean you do it alone. And so my parents are entrepreneurs. They work together. They've been married for close to 50 years, partners. So I learned what it means to have that support, have that independence, understanding you are your own independent person, but also that dependency of, what your weaknesses, your strengths are, how do you do it collectively? And so that's kind of really been pinnacle, for me in my life and the base, right? So I think a lot of people need to understand we do need each other. We need a community. We need every female, male and female. We need each other to get stronger and stronger, right? So and we don't have to do it alone. So that's kind of what I really got from my mother.
Thank you. And I'll turn it over to you to ask the next question, if you don't mind. Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. So the next question is, how does your work positively impact women on our campus or in the Durham region or women around the world?
I'll go. So I think there are a number of schools in Canada, North America, across the world, that they only have, well, for hockey and specifically, I'm not too sure about other sports. I'm assuming it's probably very similar, but they will only have a men's team and they don't have a women's team. And so I think it's extremely important that we have both genders because it's, in terms of equality, it's showing that, okay, well, we only think that we can support a men's team financially. It's there's not very many schools that there's a couple schools that have only a female team. I know they're in the States and stuff, but in Canada, any team that has a women's team also has a men's team. But if they have a men's team, you don't know if they'll have a women's team or not. There's, especially out west, a lot more. Ontario is pretty good for it. There's a couple, but so I think for the Durham region, and just to show that, young females, they come out to drop the puck at our games. They'll line up outside of our dressing room and high five us as we go by. And it's just good for these young girls of the region to see, that you can play as a female at the same level as you see all these males play.
Thanks, Marissa. That's great. Emily or Audra or Alex, you can jump in there too. I'll leave it to any one of you.
I think just within creating an environment. So the environment in which I'll create within the women's team, and I'll empower with the mindset of empowering my players. They're going to understand that environment and that culture, right? And when you role model and you create that, it's going to be passed on. So when they're out in the community and they're doing camps, clinics, having young girls come to the games, naturally they're going to translate what they've been involved with, right? Because what they know is what they're going to bring in, right? And so that's kind of how I see it is you're setting that example, you're creating those habits, behaviors, thought process, mindset, and they're going to pass that on to the next generation. And so it's that kind of cycle that you create.
Right. Thanks, Audra. And I'm going to jump ahead a couple of questions to just kind of based on something that you had mentioned, Marissa, about really being able to be for those young girls something that they can actually see and be in a university sports on a sports team. So we typically know that participation rates in sport drop off immediately after high school for a lot of females. So what kept you involved in sport beyond high school and into post-secondary? Marissa, can I leave that with you first?
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, I just think it's because I loved it. Well, I still do, obviously, I'm still here, but I think hockey and being on the ice, and I was lucky enough to have, play with some really, really good players and people that are my friends still today. We all went to kind of different schools. I actually played junior with a couple of the people on my team now, but I just think being on the ice is kind of, my safe place and where I'm the happiest, and it's an outlet for me. If I'm worried about anything, I just get on there and I don't really think of anything else. So it just makes me happy and I just love it. So it was kind of a no-brainer that that it was my goal to play post-secondary.
Awesome, thank you. Emily, can I ask that question of you, that same question about what made you continue with sports beyond high school?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it goes the same thing, like the passion for the sport. I've played it all these years. I absolutely love it. But I think one of the biggest contributions to that is my mom. I really thought that going into post-secondary, I wouldn't be able to juggle both school and sports. So I had kind of made a partial decision to stop soccer, and she ended up pushing me to do it because she's like, this is something you love, like you can't just quit. So I went to my tryouts my first year and I got on the team, and you know what, I've never looked back since, and I'm really glad that I did that, because I don't know what I would have done if I wasn't able to play all these years. So yeah, she's my biggest motivation with that.
Oh, that's awesome. And as it's been a theme throughout today that we need those people in our corner and those supports for sure. Mick, do you mind if I ask you that same question about what made you stay with hockey beyond high school?
Do you mean me? Okay. Yeah, I had kind of a similar experience. I would say the biggest thing that kept me kind of even at the beginning of high school looking to pursue hockey into post-secondary was the coach that I had. She was a fairly young woman. She had just come back from playing hockey in the United States. And she kind of explained to not just me, our whole team, how, where sport fits into the overall fabric of your life. And while it does, as Emily just said, make paying attention to school and putting the work into school more difficult because your time is constrained, the things that you learn about yourself and the friendships and all those other kind of intangible pieces of sport are a big part of enriching your overall life. So like Murph said, it's kind of once you have that kind of support and inspiration, it's kind of a no-brainer that you would want to do it.
Awesome, thanks. And did you want to ask the next question? I feel like I'm taking over here.
Hey, hey, Angela, can I jump in on that question just for a second?
Absolutely.
So what I found interesting in the response of these three young ladies is they were all obviously self-motivated and driven, and I know Audra's played it at an extremely high level. But when I looked at that question, the one thing that I guess I have a big burr under my butt about is, it's great for those ones that want to become elite athletes, as these young ladies have. But I think what's missing here is the fact that a lot of women get out of just general sport past high school. And I think a lot of that blame has to go on to our government and our education system. Because you go through high school, you only have to take 1 year of physical education to get your diploma. And we're hitting a critical point where young adults are trying to figure out what they want to do. These guys knew what they wanted to do, so they're not an issue. But what about the girl that maybe needs to be pushed to keep going into gym for 3 or 4? When I went to school, you had to do it 4 years. And I think that's really been missing, because if more young women were involved in high school, have to take it as a prerequisite, maybe we would hold on to a few of those that say, hey, this is not so bad, and it's not so uncool not to be that. So, I always I have a thing about the government, and I think sometimes they just don't do enough. They'd like to preach, we need to do all this, but how about maybe giving some assistance where young adults, primarily women, are engaged in this for longer than grade 9, and then they're out of sport. The elite athletes, they're going to go through because they go through, but I'm kind of looking at the bigger, broader picture. So it's kind of something I've always not agreed with what we've done in our education system.
Agreed, and I could see Audra nodding her head there as well. And I think, yeah, you're right. I think there was some attempt to make daily physical activity. It was a big thing, say 10 years ago, but then it just kind of seemed to fall off the wayside. And we know math is so important, English is so important. But I think if we drill down to what most parents would say for their want them to be healthy and happy, well, they can't be healthy if they're not physically active. And I totally agree with you, Alex, that I think there needs to be more opportunities, and not just skills based, but doing things as a team and building up confidence and esteem, all those other things that come along with being part of a group, as all of you know from being part of teams. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Alex. That's great. Is there anything else that anybody wanted to jump in on that about why staying past high school, or we're moving on? Awesome. I'll turn it over to Anne to ask the next question.
All right, so for the next question, what's a daily or weekly ritual that you have that contributes to your ongoing success?
I guess I'll go first. It's not really like a ritual or anything, but I do it every once in a while. I like to meditate, especially like with the program I'm in. It's pretty stressful, and I feel like I'm overwhelmed sometimes. So sometimes I just kind of sit back and do a little meditation to just kind of ground myself again, and then it helps me, to get my mind focused and to continue on, what I'm doing.
Yeah, I personally, especially with hockey, a lot of people have rituals and things that they do before games. They have to tie up a certain skate first, or there's always some sort of something. I never had any of that. I tried one game in junior. My coach was like, why aren't you have some routine? So I was like, okay. So I tried to follow a routine for one game, and it was the worst game I've ever played. It was horrible. And so I just go, and I'm loose. I talk to people. I have fun. I don't really try and focus too hard, because if I do, then I'm just I play way too much in my head, and I don't really have fun out there. But so I've never really been a ritual person, but recently I have started to try to make my bed every morning, because a family friend, he's I think professor of psychology or something. I'm not sure. My mom knows. If you can say what he is in the chat, that'd be fantastic. But he's we've known him forever. He shared this thing about how people who make their beds in the morning, are more successful. Because you get up and you have already completed one thing for the day, and it helps motivate you for the rest of the day and for the rest of the things that you have to do. So that's one thing that I'm trying to do recently. It's something little, but it's proven to to be effective. So I thought, why not give her a go?
That's awesome. Thanks. And I totally agree with that. I'd probably be late for work and then not make my bed before leaving the house. Like, yeah, I totally agree with that. Audra, Alex, anything to add in there? That something that contributes to success, something that you do routinely?
Yeah, for me, it's just being as consistent as possible. So I have a pretty consistent routine in my life, and because it becomes a habit, right? Like I don't have to overthink it; it happens. But then within that consistency and that routine, I ensure I always have a new experience at least once a week, or maybe multiple times the week. And I mean a valuable experience. And it could be a little something, right? Like seeing a coyote or something. I don't know, like as silly as, but then really appreciating it. And so like allowing myself to get out of that routine, that flexibility, because it stimulates you, it keeps your mind going. And consistency and routine does keep that calmness. So does meditation. And I implement that as well into my routine. And so, yeah, it's just that's kind of where like the things that are just, it just makes you not think as much, right? Like, and in terms of the making your bed, it is those little accomplishments, those little tasks that make massive difference in your life, because those little things add up to, that's your life, right? Everything's little moments. So good advice by a person.
Awesome. Thank you. Just getting to know you all a little bit more on a more personal level now. What's something interesting that you're currently working on, either personally or professionally? Alex, can I turn that one over to you to start?
Well, I am married to a wonderful woman that is very creative and always finds something and says, "You could do this." And unfortunately, I look at it and say, "Yeah, I could." So then it's a matter, I have another project to do. So right now she wants to put board and batten on the fireplace wall, and that's what I'm working on. So I do a lot of little projects, and I enjoy doing them with my wife, who I've been married to for 40 years. So we spend a lot of time. In terms of soccer, you know what? That is a constant. Audra would probably tell you it's every day, most of the day, here and there. So nothing specific other than getting ready for the fall. It's been a challenging year where we haven't done much, and Emily could confirm that our team took a really big hit over COVID. So we're looking at a team coming in next fall that is virtually almost all freshmen. Maybe Emily's going to come back for one more kick, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed on that one. So, from a professional point of view, I still work, so that keeps me busy every day doing that. So home projects, that's all I'm really doing right now, and doing day-to-day stuff for soccer. And we're pretty well ready for the fall already.
That's awesome. Thanks, Alex. Emily, do you mind if we jump to you and ask you the same question about something that you're currently working on, either to do with soccer or more personally?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not doing any like projects like that. I mean, with school, it's kind of hard to, do any extracurricular stuff. But I think the main thing is working on my mental health for sure, with everything that's gone on the past year. With school, I mean, with soccer, I mean, that hit me pretty hard. And with my family, it's, it's been pretty hard for me and my mental health. And now, things are starting to kind of pick up, and I'm just really trying to work on that right now so I can, get ahead and get going on everything.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So do you mind if I continue just on that question a little bit more, Emily, and just saying, so besides meditation, how else do you take care of your mental health?
Oh gosh. Well, I guess my school really helps because it's one of the more high demanding programs. So you're doing work every single day. So I think trying to focus on studying and doing my schoolwork, it really kind of takes my mind off everything else that's going on, and it keeps me, motivated and driven, to continue on. And sleep. I find that, sometimes sleep definitely very much helps with me. If I don't get enough sleep, then I'm, down there. So I think that helps too. I try to get at least my 7 to 8 hours a day if I can. Yeah.
That's awesome. Good for you. So important. It often kind of goes unrecognized, so we think it's not as important as it really is. So I appreciate that for sure. So jumping it back to you, or to you, Marissa, if you don't mind, about something personally or professionally that you're currently working on.
Yeah. Also, my mom just put in the little article there that his name is Dean Tripp, but he's about the bed making. So if you want to check it out, that's the link there. Thanks, Mom. But I think right now I'm in my last semester of my undergrad degree right now. So I think just working through that, and I'm very, very excited to be done this degree and to be graduating and stuff. So there's, I think, a couple more assignments, and then I only have one exam. So it's exciting there. And then I got accepted into Teachers College here for next year. So I'm thanks. So I'm super, super excited about that. So it's also because I get to play another season, because I know a lot of seniors this year. Like one of my best friends, she didn't get to have her senior year. She didn't get to have her, her little ceremony or whatever. So I'm excited that I get another year to just like kind of close out this chapter in my life, because COVID sucks and didn't give that opportunity to a lot of people. So yeah, just finishing this degree and putting it up on the wall, and then forgetting about it and going to my Teachers College degree. So yeah.
Good stuff. Audra, and then Nick, I might jump to you if that's okay after Audra, if you want to share with us what you're personally or professionally working on right now, Audra.
So professionally, I'm working with Canada Soccer to mentor. We have a semi-professional league in Ontario called Women's League One. And so within there's 4 of us in total, which will be working with Canada Soccer as facilitators and assessors to have over 20 female players, coaches licensed in their C license. And then through that, we're actually going to use, so it's not just going to be the traditional going through the course, it's going to be a whole mentorship process where, it's using the season to kind of be there through the 2 months, work with them, help them get the license, get the experience, create that relationship. So it's a really cool project that Canada Soccer has put together. And so I'm really excited about that. And and then personally, I just working on with the team, with the women's soccer, we actually put in a scholarship fund and bursary for James Vilfort. So to actually do camps and clinics when we're allowed to, and put some money back into this fund to be able to provide bursaries for student athletes, males and females, that may not reach the academic requirements at first due to barriers in their life, that still have the talent to play soccer, and kind of open up that so they don't lose the opportunity to attend school because of financial barriers or systematic barriers. So that's kind of what we're working on.
That's awesome. And Michaela, do you mind if I ask you the same question about what you're working on personally or professionally now that you've graduated?
Yeah, sure. I actually am never leaving the Ontario Tech community. I finished my undergrad in 2018. I just finished my master's this past summer back here, and I'm now working back at Ontario Tech in the Faculty Health Science as a lecturer and as an academic coach.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, so those are, pretty exciting opportunities that I probably got because I met people by being a student athlete, which is great. So mostly what I'm doing is trying to really enjoy those kind of really awesome opportunities that I've had and learn as much as I can from them so that I can slowly make a plan of what I want to do when I grow up, if I ever grow up.
That's awesome. Awesome. I'll turn it over to Em for the next our next question. I'll be mindful of time. I know we're about 1:45, so we're getting close.
So the next one we have is, we are seeing a development of women's professional leagues in sports. What does that mean to you and to future generations of female athletes?
I'll answer this one. I think specifically there's a large women's hockey movement going on right now with the PWPHA, I don't remember. Professional Women's PWHPA, yeah. So basically, I think it's inspiring how much progress has been made towards promoting, advancing, and trying to support a single professional women's hockey ice league in North America that's viable and can help support these athletes that have worked their whole lives, and they still often have to have one or two other jobs on top of that. So working towards one league that's sustainable and can support these athletes while they do what they love, instead of having to go to practice and then do video and then do all this stuff and then work a 9 to 5, along with a lot of them being mothers. And so it's just a lot, and it's not a viable option right now. So I just think this league would showcase the greatest product of women's professional ice hockey in the world. So I think it's amazing to see, and it kind of gives me hope for when, I have a daughter of my own and she can look up and say that she would have the exact same opportunity as any of the little boys in her class. If that's what she wanted to do, then she can look up and say, I can make a living doing this. So I think the progress they've made with that whole situation and partnering with some NHL teams and stuff is unbelievable. And it's the most progress they've made in actually probably in history. So it's going really well.
That's awesome. Anybody else wanted to jump on that one? So the development of women's professional leagues and
I think pro sports focused on Canada is it's a tough business, right? Like, I know it seems like it's not the first league. If we're looking at like tier 2 and on, and the women's leagues, the financial model it's tough if you're especially an independent club. So the idea of kind of collaboration and eliminating operational costs by partnering with an NHL or like at least like for NWSL in the US, having an MLS kind of partnership, or even just kind of facilities and other ways that generating revenue through maybe more of a site. Like, I think the financial model has to be different to be able for it to be sustainable for women's sport, right? The NBA does a really great job, the WNBA, I should say, in social activism and really kind of going outside of the sport and what the sport could do. They've kind of found their niche on really kind of marketing the sport, right? And really pro sport is down to marketing. And so for women's sport to work, people have to invest in the marketing of women's sport. It has to be accessible on TV. Like it has to be common, right? And that's kind of the fear always is we don't collaborate. So when you're working in silos, it's hard to be sustainable, male or female, right? So I think what's great about hockey, at least you have a strong male league at NHL. With women, in soccer, we just launched a CPL, a pro men's league in Canada last year, and it's struggling, right? So even though our women's national team ranks really high and is doing well, and our men's not as well, there's still that financial barrier, and there's got to be some way to, maybe COVID brought out a new way to have a financial model that really is sustainable, male, female, to really grow sport in our country. So I'm really hoping that we figure it out, and I'm happy for hockey that it sounds like there's something a little more viable there, but that success will lead to success in our sport as well.
Awesome, thank you. I think I'll jump to our next question, unless somebody has a burning desire to jump in there. And kind of an exciting question to end on, I think. We're seeing, significant growth of women being involved in sports behind the scenes. So, there's a female president of the Buffalo Bills, female officials and coaches in the NBA and NFL. Do you see an opportunity for you in sport after graduation to our student athletes?
I think for me, I know, so I just kind of decided that I wanted to go to teacher's college within the last year. Before that, I almost have a marketing degree. So I think if I were to stay in the business world, I really wanted to be behind the scenes marketing for sports. So whether that be like MLSE or something like that, that was kind of my goal there. Now that I've kind of decided exactly what I want to do in teacher's college, I think for me, it would be more on like, a lower level, like more so whether that be, volunteering to be one of the team coaches at the school I work at, or coaching or helping out with my future kids teams or stuff like that. Like I know I want to stay involved in sport. I'm just, obviously the path I'm on right now, it wouldn't be to go up to be something for the Maple Leafs when it's just not like for me right now, but I for sure want to stay in sport and maybe to help inspire the younger generations while I'm teaching.
That would be amazing. And I would, just when you said lower level, I would almost challenge you to accept maybe like something like more community level or more grassroots level.
No, I said that and I was like, that's not what I just meant, like on a smaller scale.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that'll be awesome. What a great inspiration you will be as a teacher because of your lived experience, which is so awesome. Michaela or Emily, can I throw that one to you as well? Do you see an opportunity for you in sport after graduation?
I guess it goes the same with what Marissa said. I'm in school to, be a nurse. So I feel like it'll be a little hard. I guess, as she said, like inspiring, the younger people to continue. And obviously I want to continue playing. Definitely not on a professional level, as I, wouldn't have the time or whatever, but I would definitely like to continue playing as it's something, that I'm passionate about and, keep me on my toes. But yeah, it depends on really where my career goes. If I expand, if nursing can, be correlated with sports, I definitely look into that. But yeah, we'll see where things go.
That's great. Thank you. Can I jump to you too, Michaela?
Sure, yeah. I tried my hand at coaching while I was doing my master's. I came back to help with the hockey team, and I really enjoyed that. But the work I did while I was doing my master's was focused on grassroots programming, specifically in parasport in the Durham region. But I'm pretty passionate about, grassroots and recreational support through the ages. So I would really like to get into kind of that government or policy development side that Alex was talking about earlier, and really push to make those kind of systemic changes that get, all youth, but especially kind of adolescent girls, interested in sport, interested in physical activity, and staying into it as they, become adults and even beyond. So that's kind of where I'd like to be.
That's awesome. Thank you. And I'll just, feel free to add anything that you want to kind of as we end this conversation. If you have a final thought that you wanted to kind of end off with. As you were talking, I wrote down some themes that kind of came up a number of times, and that would be resilience, patience, advocacy, progress, challenges, and opportunities. So it's nice to hear, kind of you reflect back on what you've seen and what you've experienced in sport, and then also looking so far ahead at, what the possibilities are and how far, those two have really come. So really thank you for your insight, and thank you for all that you did to advocate and to encourage kids, children, adolescents, your peers to be as active as possible. And I know you'll continue to do some really great things as you move forward. And just like Michaela, hopefully you'll always be tied to our campus, Durham College or Ontario Tech in some way, because it's really great to have that homegrown talent kind of thrown back in whatever capacity that is. So we really appreciate your time with us today. And if you had a final thought that you wanted to share, feel free to jump in. And if not, then we'll bid you adieu for the day.
I just would love to say thank you for letting me kind of impromptu be added to this panel. I'm always happy to kind of participate in these conversations. So I'm very thankful that I still get to be included in the Ontario Tech community. So thank you for that.
Oh, we're so glad. As soon as I saw you, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. That was great. So yes, I guess we'll end there. So thank you so much to everybody, those that have showed up to join us, those that are watching this afterwards on the Campus Recreation website, and especially to Emily for co-moderating with us, and all of our panelists. We really appreciate it. Scott for recording as usual and doing all that magical stuff behind the scenes. And yeah, have a great day, everybody. And yeah, do all you can to advocate and to empower everybody, because we all, everybody needs it for sure. And that support, as we know, is so key. So thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.